Now this watch belongs to a guy called Sandy, and we're going to have a chat with him later, but I do know that in its recent history it's spent at least a few years behind a chest freezer. Now the movement inside this watch is frankly just weird, and the story of how it came to Sandy is really interesting. So yeah, sit back and relax and let me show you what I mean, and let's let Sandy tell the story of this really interesting watch by Longines. But that's nice. That is pretty. Now this case of course is 18 karat gold, solid 18 karat gold. That is a nice touch on the back there. But yeah, hopefully underneath the dial is alright, but we'll see that later. Let's just check out. Oh, okay, that looks good. The at least the motion work is working. Oh, that's not good. The stem just fell out. So let's have the back off. This that came off really easily. Let's take a look. Oh, no, I was not expecting that. That's actually quite weird. Yeah, the rotor is a bit loose here, but also the rotor looks like no rotor I've ever seen.
Hey Richard.
Sandy, how's it going?
Yes, how's that? Better?
Yeah, that's much better. In fact, you're a little bit loud, so I'm just gonna change a microphone here, just so that you don't sound like a Dalek. And how long have I had this watch?
I don't know. I've been better relaxed about it. I haven't been giving it a moment's thought. But,
When we last spoke, you talked about the history of the watch, and it's actually quite interesting. So if we could just revise that a little bit.
yeah, sure. So I mean, it was given to me by my Godfather, which is not enormously, exciting in and of itself. But he's an interesting guy. I used to see him when I went up home to Scotland from time to time, and was dropped in, and he just one day just pulled this thing out of his pocket and said, "I'd like you to have this," and it was a Longines Flagship, and it was lovely. So his background, he was in the German army during the Second World War. He was a Fallschirmjäger, so effectively paratrooper, and I think he was at Arnhem, and he was at various other places. But ultimately, he was taken prisoner and ended up as a prisoner of war. And then he was sent to work as a farm labourer in Scotland, and he never went home. And he became absolutely, part of the fabric of society in sort of southwest Scotland and Galloway, and became very good friends with my parents, and he was my godfather. So that was a sort of, it's not so much the story of the watch, but more the story of its origins and how it came to me.
Do we have his name?
Yeah, so he was William, I think Wilhelm Suckro, and I've since, I mean, he was one of many, so he wasn't sort of decorated general or anything. There's nothing online, but it was got William Suckro.
Okay, is William still alive?
No, he died a good few years ago. I mean, time flies. It was certainly more than 10 years ago, but actually, probably close to 20. I pulled the chest freezer out because it's in the garage. Pulled it out, I was cleaning behind it, and there it was down the back of the chest freezer.
That is brilliant.
And what had happened, of course, is the pin in the, and you'll know the technical bits, the pin that watch strap slides into had come off.
Yeah.
And of course, as I went into the freezer with my arms straightened out as I lifted the lid, it popped off and slid down like a ski jumper down the back of down the freezer lid and shot down the back of it, never to be seen again. Of course, I didn't notice it, and I thought I'd lost it completely.
Okay, let's get this weird looking rotor off. Not actually ever seen one like this before. And before we go any further, let's see if we can get the watch to tick. Put a little bit of power on the mainspring. And nope, doesn't want to go. Let's try and encourage it with a puffer. No, watch doesn't want to work at all, so let's get into it, starting with part of the automatic works. You know, this watch is really nicely finished. The way in which it's put together, the kind of design of it is very, very different, but the finish when you're working inside this watch is it's like working inside a Rolex of the era. Yep, the crystal needs replacing, and we've also got this internal part that's got to come out of the case before we clean it. Subscribing is free, and yeah, why not take a moment to do that? Let's flip the movement over. And we're going to take out the motion work now. Just take this plate off that holds down the minute wheel. Come in with my little tool here to liberate the cannon pinion. There it goes. And not to forget this tiny little intermediate wheel. Very easy to flip the movement over with that on and lose it. So time to disarm the mainspring. Now the spring in this caliber, the mainspring, is actually a sealed unit, so we're not going to be able to get in there and clean it. So it's important that this spring has got some power on it. And yep, yeah, that is pretty feisty, so I think we're going to be okay there. Next thing we've got to do is take out the most delicate part of the mechanism, which is the balance. And again, unusually, Longines have decided to hold the balance cock down with 2 screws. Everybody else uses 1 screw. Apart from that, the balance is reasonably standard in terms of its design. Always pop it in its own little container. Next, we are going to take off the train bridge. Now there are a lot of pivots under here. So taking it off is easy. Getting it back on will not be so easy. Again, you can just see the quality of the finish inside this watch. Really very, very nice. Take out the reversing wheels, and we're now down to the barrel bridge. Let's take that out and take out the mainspring barrel, and underneath is the ratchet wheel, because unlike any other watch of the period, the click and the ratchet is on the dial side of the watch. Now we are down to the pallet fork, so just removing the screws here for the pallet fork bridge. We're in nice and close, and again you can just see the How shiny this is, and this is before I've cleaned it. Don't forget that little wheel there. Now this central wheel is actually riveted on and it's held on by this bridge here, but the screws, for some reason, Longines has stuck them on the other side of the movement, so we have to flip it over to liberate it. When we do, this little wheel will come with it, so we need to make sure we don't forget this little extra wheel here. So flip the movement over, release the screws, and those components just drop out the bottom. Voila. Now we can remove the screws with a piece of Rodico. So the keyless works is also designed differently, very reminiscent of some early pocket watches. It actually uses a rocker, which is unusual. That's to toggle between the different states there on the keyless works. Take out the click. And it's time then to clean this watch now. There it is, there's the full movement, completely disassembled. So these are the two screws that hold the movement into the case, and the one on the left, that's been replaced at some point and it's not the correct screw. Now I haven't got exactly the right screw, and the replacement, the head on it is a little bit big, so I think I'm just going to take that down on the lathe and then we can get the movement cleaned up. And time to put the parts through the ultrasonic cleaner. We're going to start by putting this double screwed balance back on the movement, which is a helpful way of cleaning it. Pop it in one of my tea strainers, and then put the other parts that we're going to clean in to these little cheap and cheerful but really effective little containers. In the bottle on the left is the cleaner, on the right the clear liquid, that is the rinse, and I'm only showing those here, but actually I use a third solution as well, and that is isopropyl alcohol at the end when I've done with these two. But we've put them in the ultrasonic cleaner. I don't use a rotary cleaner. I don't really like them. Now before I start putting this Longines back together, I just want to show you this, because this is the watch that I make under my own brand Major, which was my rank when I left the British Army. It's called the Seawolf and it comes in steel and black and bronze, and isn't it pretty? Anyway, check out the link in the description. Now, here is the sealed unit then. We can't get inside it. First thing we've got to do is lubricate the barrel arbor seating, and then put in the ratchet wheel with the barrel arbor on it, and lubricate the central part of the barrel arbor. Replace this little pinion, which is driven by the mainspring. A bit tricky to do that, so I have to take out the mainspring just to locate it, and then pop it back on. Bit more lubrication, and pop on the barrel bridge. Just get that seated down neatly. And another thing about this movement, the screws that Longines use are big, which is really great. I think this watch was designed by some very talented and very bored watchmakers. Back on with the riveted central wheel. Now place this on a movement cushion so that it holds it in whilst we do the screws that retain it. But as you can see now, that is out of the cleaner, is even more sparkly than it went in, and it went in pretty sparkly. So let's replace the train. The scary thing when you're a watchmaker doing this is counting the number of pivots that you're now going to have to locate in the train bridge all at the same time. Even this last one here for the sweep hand, the second hand. And let's put the train bridge on, and at this point I gloss over getting it all located, but actually fair play to Longines, it was pretty easy to do it, and that's because everything is so accurate. And once you're sure that it's located, you can torque it up. So now we can move back to the keyless works and just put in the setting lever, just holding that on, having flipped over the movement and screwing that down, and then just checking its operation. Then some grease for the rocker, which is the, again, ingenious way that Longines are doing the keyless works on here. Not a normal way of doing it. Well, not since about 1847. But rather elegant, I think. Works rather nicely, but does need a bit of spring behind it. And there is the spring. So we're just going to locate that in now. And on with the cannon pinion. A little bit of lighter lubricant for the intermediate wheel. And also for the minute wheel. Just hold that down with the securing plate and the little screw. And replace the click. Having replaced it, we just need to check its operation, make sure that it's working fine, and it is. And onto the pallet fork. The pallet fork is very tiny, and we're going to have to put some special grease on. We use Mobius 9415 for this. And we have to lubricate the correct edges of the jewels. Now, it's very easy to put too much lubricant on here, and what I do afterwards to calm it down a little bit is just drop it into some alcohol, and then we place it onto the movement, and then using the microscope make absolutely sure that the pivots are in. Now we can go back to the automatic works and replace those finally we can put some power on the watch, because we're going to get the moment of truth in a moment where we put the balance back on. First we need to clean the balance in some B-dip, just agitate it with a blower. Now this, particularly with this double screw arrangement, is a tricky thing to get right, but there we are. We had power in the train, we got the balance back on, and that is some nice high amplitude, so very chuffed with that. Back with Longines' innovative rotor with the drive teeth at the edge, and some lubrication for, well, between the cannon pinion and the hour wheel, and then we're going to put the foil on the top. Replace the dial very carefully and replace the hands. First one, the hour hand, and there we go, we have a working watch.